I don't usually stop for anything when it's raining like that. The streets were slick with ice-cold water, rain cascading in sheets from the sky as I hurried home with my hood up and hands buried deep in my soaked jacket. My boots slapped hard against the pavement, and all I could think about was getting inside, peeling off my wet clothes, and curling up under a blanket with something warm to drink. It was the kind of weather that made the world feel abandoned. No cars, no people. Just the hiss of rain and the occasional flicker of a dying street lamp. But something made me stop that night. It was a sound small, almost swallowed by the storm. A meow, not a normal one. This was low, rasping, like it hurt to make. It was wrong enough to make my skin prickle. I turned my head, scanning the puddle-filled sidewalk and the shadows clinging to the building walls. That's when I saw it. Under the flickering light of a crooked street lamp, there it was. A cat huddled beneath the concrete overhang, like it had just dropped in from another world. Its fur looked dark and patchy, clinging weightly to a thin frame, but its eyes, God, its eyes glowed, not reflected like a normal cat's eyes would in the light. These glowed from within, burning like twin emerald coals. It stared at me. Not the way animals usually do when they're afraid or sizing you up. This stare was deliberate, measured, human, almost. I should have kept walking. I should have told myself I was imagining things. But instead I moved toward it. "Hey there," I murmured, kneeling down slowly like it was a skittish stray. "Where'd you come from?" It didn't move. I reached out a hand. The rain was freezing, soaking through my sleeves and dripping from my hair. But when I touched the cat, it was dry. Perfectly, eerily dry. Its fur was soft, almost silky, and warm against my skin. It purred, but the sound was rough, like it had gravel in its throat. "You poor thing," I said, scooping it up. Its body was light, almost too light, and I could feel its ribs through its fur. I cradled it against my chest as I climbed the stairs to my apartment, water squishing with every step I took. The whole time, I could feel it breathing short, rasping breaths like something trying to mimic the sound of life. Once inside, I set it down gently on the floor. The little creature sat there calmly, unblinking, still staring at me with those blazing green eyes. It didn't dart under furniture or start exploring like most cats would. It just watched. I shook the rain from my jacket and rubbed my arms, suddenly feeling how cold my skin had gotten. "You've got to be starving?" I muttered, heading to the kitchen. I hadn't owned a pet in years, but I always kept some canned tuna for emergencies. I opened a can, the metallic click hiss cutting through the quiet apartment. The smell hit immediately strong and fishy, enough to make my stomach growl. I slid the plate of tuna toward the cat and waited. It didn't move, nothing, just that same intense stare. I frowned. Seriously, not even a nibble? I grabbed a bowl from the cupboard and poured some milk, then placed it next to the tuna. The cat didn't budge. It didn't even glance at the offerings. I chuckled nervously and scratched the back of my head. "Guess you're picky," but the laugh felt forced. There was something unnatural about the way it sat, its back perfectly straight, tail curled neatly around its paws like it had been placed there for display. I shook it off. I was tired. Maybe a little too tired to be thinking straight. Over the next couple of days, I tried everything. Chicken scraps, salmon, store-bought cat food from the corner shop, dry kibble, wet food, even sardines. Nothing worked. It never even sniffed the food. I tried looking up signs of stress in cats. Maybe it was too scared to eat, I thought. Or sick. But the weird part was it didn't look sicker. It looked healthier, bigger. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but soon the change was undeniable. The once thin frame was filling out. The cat's fur had grown thicker, darker, like it had been dyed in shadows. Its eyes glowed brighter now, almost casting their own light in the darkness of the apartment. I caught them glowing from across the room more than once, always fixed on me. I started calling it Shadow. It felt appropriate. It never meowed again after that first night, never hissed or purred. Just followed me from room to room, like it was keeping track of me. The silence became unbearable. I'd wake up and find it, perched on the edge of my bed, still and watching. I'd close the bathroom door only to open it and find Shadow already inside, waiting. Then came the sounds. At night, when I tried to sleep, I started hearing faint scratching. It came from inside the walls, slow and deliberate, the kind of sound that made you sit bolt upright with goosebumps on your arms. At first, I thought maybe it was rats or the pipes. Old buildings make noise, right? But the sounds always started right after Shadow left the room. That cold feeling would creep up my spine, and I'd find myself staring into the hallway, half expecting something to crawl out of the shadows. I told myself I was being paranoid, sleep deprived, but the more I tried to rationalize it, the deeper the feeling sank in. I hadn't brought home a stray cat. I had invited something else in, something that had been waiting for a long, long time. I started keeping the lights on at night. It was a stupid thing, maybe childish, but I couldn't help it. The darkness in my apartment had started to feel heavier. Like it wasn't just the absence of light, but something waiting inside it, watching. I couldn't prove it, but I felt it. Every time I turned off the lamp, every time I passed a shadowy hallway, every time I shut a door behind me, I felt it waiting on the other side. And Shadow, he never slept. Every time I woke up, he was there, always there, sitting on the dresser, perched on the windowsill. Once, I jolted awake in the middle of the night and found him standing right on my chest, staring down at me, eyes glowing like green fire. I didn't hear him jump up, didn't feel the pressure until I opened my eyes. He didn't blink, just stared. I couldn't breathe for a second. My chest was tight like I was being held down by something much heavier than a cat. My heart thudded violently in my ribs, and I instinctively reached out to shove him off. But the moment my hand touched his fur, it was ice cold, colder than anything I'd ever touched. I sat up in bed, gasping, heart hammering like I'd just outrun something. Shadow hopped down gracefully and slinked into the shadows of the room. I turned every damn light on after that, slept with them burning into my eyelids. That's when the dreams began. They weren't like normal dreams. They didn't fade when I woke up. They stayed with me sharp, full-color fragments etched into my brain like scars. In one, I was in my apartment, but everything was wrong. The walls were sagging inward like a stomach turned inside out. The floor squirmed under my feet, alive with black tendrils that pulsed and shifted when I stepped. Shadow was there too, but not as a cat, not anymore. He had grown, its limbs stretched and twisted into grotesque mockeries of paws and legs, jointed the wrong way. Its head was too large, too heavy for its frame, and its jaw. Its jaw unhinged like a snake, revealing rows of needle-thin teeth that clicked together as it whispered things in a language I couldn't understand. The worst part? I felt myself listening, understanding, like some part of me was changing too. I woke up in a cold sweat, panting, and immediately noticed it, the burning on my arm. I looked down and saw them, fresh red scratches. 4 deep slashes across my forearm. They weren't there when I went to bed. I would have noticed. Shadow was sitting in the corner. His eyes glowed brighter than ever. He didn't look away. He never looked away. Over the next few days, everything spiraled. My apartment felt wrong. It smelled different, metallic and sharp, like old blood and rotting wood. No matter how many candles I lit, how much I scrubbed or aired out the place, the smell lingered. I stopped bringing people over. Not that I had many friends close by. But even coworkers I barely spoke to commented on how drained I looked. One of them, Jenna, joked that I looked like I was being haunted. I laughed. Too hard. Shadow had gotten bigger. That's not an exaggeration. He wasn't a normal cat size anymore. Not even close. He was the size of a medium dog now, but his proportions were still feline. Sort of, except he moved wrong. Like his limbs bent just a little too far. His paws made no sound on the hardwood floors, but I'd hear soft clicks in the silence, like claws against tile. I tried taking him to the vet. God knows I tried. I Figured maybe if I could get someone else to see him, really see him, I'd get answers. But when I stuffed him into a carrier one, I had to buy special because no normal sized one could fit him. He let out this horrible sound. A hiss mixed with a growl mixed with something like a laugh. It shook me to the core. My hands trembled as I snapped the cage shut and loaded him into the car. When we got there, the vet's receptionist looked at the carrier and frowned. You said you brought a cat? Yes, I said quickly, brushing rain off my jacket. He's in there. She looked confused. There's nothing in the crate. I froze. I turned to the carrier. The mesh window was empty. I yanked. The zipper opened and looked inside. Empty. Gone. I panicked. Tore the car apart. Looked under the seats. Checked the trunk even though I knew I hadn't opened it. Nothing. I drove home in stunned silence. Sweat cold on my forehead. When I opened the door to my apartment, Shadow was there, sitting on the couch, staring. He was even bigger now. He hadn't left. That was the moment I stopped pretending I'd rescued a cat, whatever Shadow was. It had come into my life on purpose. It had waited under that flickering street lamp, knowing I'd stop, knowing I'd take it home. And now, it was growing, not just in size, but in presence, in strength, in hunger. And I didn't know how much longer I'd last before whatever it was finally decided I was ready. Ready for what? I didn't want to know. I stopped calling it a cat. Somewhere between the third sleepless night and the 10th fresh scratch on my body, I accepted it. This thing wasn't a pet, and it definitely wasn't a stray. I don't even know why I ever believed that. Maybe because it wanted me to. Maybe that was part of how it got in. I started calling it like a tumor you don't want to acknowledge. But it was impossible to ignore now. It had grown again. No exaggeration. Shadow, if I could still call it that now, filled the couch when it lay stretched out. Its limbs were far too long for any animal I'd ever seen, with joints that popped and twisted unnaturally when it moved. The fur was almost black now, but it shimmered with a strange, greasy sheen, like it was soaked in oil. Its glowing green eyes burned brighter than ever, and its mouth got me. Its mouth seemed wider, stretched with some unseen force, as if it were preparing to swallow something whole. I tried not to look at it. That became my new ritual. Don't look. Don't speak. Don't react, because I was starting to notice it responded to fear. The more scared I became, the stronger it seemed, and the stronger it got, the more reality bent around it. The scratching noises at night had escalated into full-blown dragging sounds. It was like something was being pulled across the walls inside my apartment, heavy and slow. Sometimes I'd hear whispering two garbled syllables, like wind shrieking through rusted pipes. Not quite human, not quite anything. And worst of all, I started forgetting things. Whole hours would disappear from my day. I'd glance at the clock and blink, and 2 or 3 hours would be gone. I once found myself standing in the hallway, one hand on the front doorknob, barefoot and shaking. I didn't remember getting out of bed. I kept a journal, something I hadn't done since high school. I began writing everything down, what I saw, what I felt, what it did. March 3rd, Shadow stared at the corner for over an hour. Wouldn't look at me. Room smelled like burned plastic. March 5th, woke up on the kitchen floor. Shadow watching from the counter. Hands covered in dirt. No idea why. March 6th, it grew. Again. I was unraveling. I could feel it. One night, I finally cracked. I grabbed the plate of untouched food sitting by the wall and slammed it down on the kitchen floor. What do you want from me? I screamed. My voice bounced off the walls like it didn't belong to me. It turned to face me, slowly, like a predator humoring its prey. Then it opened its mouth. Not to hiss, not to meow, but to speak. What came out wasn't English. It wasn't any language I knew, but I heard meaning in it. My ears burned from the sound low, reverberating, like it was coming from inside my own bones. And I understood it. Not in words, but in feeling. Fear. It wanted fear. That's how it fed. It never needed food. Never needed milk. That had all been a game. The real nourishment was me. My anxiety, my dread, every nightmare I suffered, every time my breath caught in my throat, every second I spent trembling in the dark, it was feeding on that. That's why it never attacked me. It didn't need to. It was growing fat on my terror. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor, with every light in the apartment turned on, daggering holes into the shadows with lamps, flashlights, even the oven light. And still it sat in the corner of the room, massive and still, watching. At 3:16 a.m., I passed out. When I woke, it was sitting just inches from my face. It hadn't moved silently. There were scratch marks all over the floor, deep ones, like it had dragged its enormous frame toward me inch by inch while I slept. And right there, that close, I saw something I hadn't before. Its eyes weren't just glowing, they contained something. Inside the green fire were shapes, shadows twisting, screaming, stretching against the walls of its pupils like trapped souls trying to claw their way out. Faces, hands, eyes. One of them looked like mine. I stumbled back, barely suppressing a scream. My head cracked against the table and everything spun. I crawled into the bathroom, slammed the door shut, and locked it, my breath hitching, the air feeling too thin. And even through the thick wooden door, I could hear the whispering start again. This time, it was saying my name. Over and over, like a prayer or a countdown. I splashed cold water on my face and stared into the mirror, heart racing, fingers gripping the sink so hard my knuckles turned white. I had to find a way to end this. Because whatever this thing was, it wasn't going to stop. It was growing stronger by the day. And sooner or later, it wouldn't be satisfied with fear alone. I left my apartment for the first time in 2 weeks. I had to. If I stayed one more night in there, I wasn't going to make it out sane. That thing's shadow wasn't just watching anymore. It was invading. The dreams, the waking blackouts, the way it whispered my name like it already owned me. I don't remember grabbing my keys or putting on my coat. I just remember walking down the hallway, heart pounding, past neighbors I hadn't seen in days. One of them, a pale woman with two wide eyes, looked at me as I passed and muttered, "It's feeding on you too." I didn't stop. I didn't ask. I just walked out into the night. I hadn't seen the city in weeks. It was jarring, so normal, so indifferent. Cars passed. Neon lights flickered above convenience stores. People laughed in the distance, oblivious. Somewhere out there, the world was still functioning. But in my head, I was rotting. I only had one destination in mind. I remembered a place someone once mentioned during a drunken party. A weird little occult shop tucked away in the oldest part of the city. The kind of place people joked about, laughed about. A gimmick. But I remembered the way the guy's voice changed when he said it. Not joking. Like he believed. It took me hours to find it. Tucked between a boarded-up bookstore and a Thai restaurant was a narrow door made of rotting wood, painted blood red. Above it, a weather-worn sign simply read, "Augury." The window beside it was fogged, impossible to see through. I pushed the door open. A small bell chimed, the sound unnaturally sharp. Inside, the smell hit me first. A thick blend of old incense, dried herbs, and something ... musty. The lighting was low, cast by dozens of flickering candles. Shelves lined the walls, cluttered with bone trinkets, jars of blackened roots, and old books with names in languages I couldn't read. Behind a glass counter sat an old woman. She looked up as I entered, and I froze. Her eyes were just like shadows, bright green, too bright, not glowing like his, but close. She studied me for a long moment before she spoke. "You brought something back with you, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "It followed me home from the street?" "No," I whispered. "Not anymore. Maybe not ever." I told her everything. From the night I found it to the food it wouldn't touch, to the way it grew, the dreams, the scratches, the whispers, the blackout gaps, the faces in its eyes. I spelled it all, like a confession. Her expression didn't change until I described its hunger, how I knew it fed on fear. That's when I saw it. A flicker of fear in her eyes. A fear eater. she said quietly. Old, ancient. They don't live in this world. They use vessels animals, mostly. Just small things, unnoticed. They anchor themselves through emotion. The stronger your fear, the more real they become. I swallowed hard. So it's not a demon or a ghost. It's older than either. I didn't speak. She reached under the counter and pulled out a small black box. Inside was a dagger short, crooked, and rusted. Its handle was wrapped in what looked like brittle, dried leather. The blade had strange symbols etched into it, symbols that made my skin crawl just looking at them. Steel alone won't work, she said. But this has been prepared. Blessed. It's drawn blood from their kind before. She slid a second item across the counter, an old yellowed piece of parchment with a series of symbols and an incantation. Written in jagged ink. You'll need to weaken it first. The words are old, older than Latin. Speak them while you stab. Over and over until it's gone. And if I fail. I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I paid her. Or maybe I didn't. I don't even remember taking out my wallet. Everything after that was a blur. A long walk through dark streets with the dagger wrapped in cloth. The scroll tucked into my coat pocket. My hands shook the entire way home. The building was silent when I returned. Too silent. I stepped inside, and the temperature dropped instantly. The air was thick, almost gelatinous, like stepping into a dream that had curdled. The door creaked shut behind me. Shadow was waiting. It sat in the middle of the living room, no longer trying to resemble a cat. Its form was bloated now, rippling with oily black fur and hunched muscle. Its limbs were impossibly long, splayed out like roots searching for something to cling to. Its eyes, God, its eyes were burning holes into my chest. It stood. It was taller than me now, and it opened its mouth. The scream that came out wasn't sound. It was a feeling. It hit me like a wall, my mind flooded with panic, my body frozen in place, lungs seized. I reached for the dagger. The parchment with the words was already in my hand, though I didn't remember pulling it out. My lips moved. The words came, and Shadow began to move. I didn't expect the words to work. I didn't expect anything, really. I was acting on instinct and terror. But the moment my voice broke the silence, speaking those ancient syllables scrawled on the parchment, the room changed. The light twisted, the shadow stretched, and Shadow, whatever it truly was, screamed. Not like a cat, not like an animal. It was deeper. Wrong. A scraping, echoing cry that rattled the glass in the windows and made my vision blur. The pitch of it wasn't just noise, it was pressure. It made my bones ache, my teeth rattle in their sockets. Still, I kept speaking. The dagger trembled in my hand, vibrating as though alive. The symbols on its blade pulsed with dull orange light, growing stronger the more I recited. My throat burned, my voice faltering, but I gritted my teeth and kept going. Shadow lunged. It moved like a shadow breaking its own rules, no arc, no logic. It was in the far corner of the room one moment and nearly on top of me the next. Limbs flailing, twisting, snapping in and out of reality. I dodged barely. One of its elongated arms grazed my shoulder, and I felt a heat like fire beneath my skin. I stumbled back, crashing into my bookshelf, sending old paperbacks raining. Down. Keep going. I gasped to myself. Don't stop. I raised the dagger and started the incantation again, louder this time, trying to drown out its howling, trying to will it out of my reality. The symbols on the scroll burned in my vision like after images, like they had moved slightly on the page when I wasn't looking. Shadow's form shuddered violently, parts of it unraveling like smoke being sucked into a vacuum. But it fought back. Every time I spoke a line, it shifted into something worse. At one point, it split. I swear it did. Two heads bloomed from its hunched form, mouths yawning open with rows of writhing, needle-thin teeth. One hissed in that ancient language I'd heard in the dream. The other spoke in my voice cry. pleading, "Please stop. Don't hurt me. Help me," I faltered. For a split second, I almost believed it. That's how it worked. It didn't kill you. It wore you down, broke you apart, hollowed you out until you begged it to take. The last piece, I remembered the scratches, the blood, the sleepless nights, the faces in its eyes. And I screamed the words louder. I rushed forward, dagger raised, slamming it deep into its writhing chest, or where a chest should have been. The blade sank in with a sound like wet rope twisting around metal. Shadow thrashed, limbs convulsing, howling in voices that weren't human. It tried to grab me, limbs snapping out like tendrils, twisting around my arm, my neck, my waist, but I twisted the dagger deeper and kept chanting. Its body convulsed. The black fur peeled away like paper. Beneath it was nothing. Not flesh, not blood, just void. A swirling darkness that sucked in light, sound, warmth. My apartment was being pulled into it, books, furniture, air itself. I clung to the floor with one hand, stabbing again with the other, reciting the last line of the incantation with everything I had. And Tenebris ready. Return to the dark. The creature howled one final, deafening, earth-shaking scream, and then it burst, not into flame, not into gore, but into a cloud of black, oily mist that filled the room like smoke. I choked, coughing violently, my lungs searing with cold. The mist coiled upward, toward the ceiling, writhing like it was searching for a crack, a crevice to escape through. And then silence. It was gone. The mist evaporated into nothing. The lights flickered once, then steadied. The dagger clattered to the floor from my numb fingers. My whole body trembled. I couldn't tell if it was from adrenaline or fear or both. I collapsed to my knees and sat there, gasping for breath, soaked in sweat and shaking from head to toe. My apartment looked like a crime scene, furniture overturned, claw marks gouged into the floorboards. The walls covered in smears of something dark and oily, still steaming. My front door was hanging off its hinges like something had burst through it, and yet it was over. I had won. Or so I thought. I began to move, crawling toward the kitchen where my phone had slid under the table. My limbs ached like they'd been pulled from their sockets and forced back in. I needed help. I needed a hospital or maybe a priest. But just before I could grab the phone, I felt it. A sudden cold breeze sweep across my back, so cold it burned. I turned, and there it was, the black mist back swirling from the cracks. In the floorboards, gathering, coalescing, reforming. No. I breathed. A shape emerged, larger, twisted. Its eyes burned brighter than before, full of rage, full of hunger. I hadn't finished it, not completely. It had only retreated, regrouped. I had heard it, but it wasn't dead. Not yet. I grabbed the dagger again, blood slick and burning in my hand. I didn't run. Not this time. This time, I would end it. The dagger was slick with something thick and dark blood, maybe, or whatever passed for blood in that thing's twisted body. My hand shook as I held it out in front of me, fingers locked tight around the leather-wrapped hilt. Across the room, the black mist turned like a living storm, writhing and clawing its way back into shape. Limbs stretched unnaturally from the center mass, growing longer with every second, forming crooked legs and sinewy claws that scraped along the splintered floorboards. It had eyes again. Worse than before. No longer just glowing, they were. Burning, flickering like green lanterns held behind a veil of smoke. And inside them faces. Screaming, distorted, some of them mine. I didn't know how many pieces of myself this thing had tried to take, but I knew if I didn't finish it now, it would get the rest. I clutched the parchment in my other hand, now damp and smudged with blood and sweat, and began chanting again. My voice was hoarse, but I forced the words out like they were oxygen. And Tenebris ready, and Tenebris ready. Shadow screamed not with fear, but fury. Its mouth opened. impossibly wide, splitting its head in half, revealing rows of serrated, dripping teeth. It lunged forward, faster than before, claws dragging across the walls, gouging deep burrows into plaster and paint. It didn't care about hiding now. It didn't need to. I ducked just in time, rolling across the broken floor as its bulk slammed into the wall behind me with a sickening crunch. The force shook the whole apartment. Chunks of drywall fell from the ceiling. Light bulbs shattered in their sockets. I didn't stop chanting. In tenebrae ready. I drove the dagger forward, again aiming not for the chest this time, but for the eyes. The blade plunged deep, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I heard it cry out in pain. Its body convulsed, limbs flailing wildly, knocking over furniture, smashing the kitchen table to splinters. I was thrown backward against the wall, vision blurring. The parchment tore in half, the symbols disappearing into the wreckage, but the damage was done. The dagger was still lodged in its head, pulsing, glowing now, brighter and brighter. The symbols along the blade had lit like embers in a dying fire, and the creature began to wither. Its form twisted and collapsed inward, smoke pouring from the wound like a chimney in a storm. The eyes dimmed. The faces inside flickered, then vanished. And then it let out one final sound, not a scream, but a whimper, a soft, shuddering exhale. Like it knew it was over, its body cracked like porcelain under pressure. The oily skin split and dissolved into vapor. Its limbs curled inward, shrinking, curling like a dying spider. And finally its head burst into ash. The mist dispersed, evaporating in all directions like smoke sucked through invisible vents. And then silence. No groan of settling floorboards. No whispering voices. And no burning green eyes in the dark. Just the sound of my own gasping breath and the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. It was gone. Really, finally gone. I didn't move for a long time. I sat there in the debris of my apartment, surrounded by shredded furniture, cracked windows, and deep, jagged claw marks that would never buff out. My hands were cut and bleeding. My shirt was torn. My chest felt like it had been crushed. But I was alive. When I finally found the strength to stand, I limped to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. The mirror was cracked, but I could still see my own reflection, pale, hollow-eyed, but mine. I spent the rest of that night packing what little I could salvage, the few clothes not shredded, my laptop, a few old photographs. I left the dagger buried in the floor where Shadow had died. Somehow I knew it was safest left behind. By morning, I was gone. I didn't even bother to break my lease. I moved into a small apartment 2 cities over. A shoebox, but it was clean. No scratches on the walls. No shadows that moved when I wasn't looking. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night, but it never really left me. Some nights, I wake up without knowing why. And I'll swear I feel a chill brush against my toes, or hear a faint click-click of claws on tile. Sometimes, I'll see glowing green eyes in the corners of my dreams, and I'll wake to find fresh scratches on my arms or shoulders. Not deep, not angry, just reminders. It feeds on fear, the woman in the shop had said, and while I might have banished it, I had fed it plenty. That kind of thing doesn't just disappear. So now I keep the lights on at night. And every time I hear a soft meow outside my window, I don't check. I never look. Because I know what's waiting out there. In the dark, and this time, I won't invite it in. The third night at the cabin was when I finally began to breathe again. After years of living in a city where sirens replaced birdsong and concrete drowned the stars, the silence of nature felt ... cleansing. I sat out on the porch, wrapped in a flannel blanket, sipping lukewarm tea and watching the wind sway the trees. Crickets chirped in the underbrush. Leaves rustled with gentle ease. Every now and then an owl would hoot from deep within the woods, as if answering some distant, unseen call. It was peaceful in the kind of way that makes you feel small but safe. And then I heard it, laughter. Not just any laughter, my laughter. I froze. the mug halfway to my lips. It hadn't come from me, and it hadn't come from the radio or the phone or the speakers, none of which were even on. It came from the woods, somewhere out beyond the tree line. Just faint enough to make me question whether I'd imagined it, but too familiar to dismiss. I stood up, straining my ears, heart thudding harder with every passing second of silence. Then, again, it echoed through the trees, same pitch, same timing, same exact cadence as the laugh I'd let out not 5 minutes earlier, when I accidentally spilled tea on my sock. Only this time, ... it didn't fade naturally. It kept going, mocking, repeating, like someone or something was imitating me from out in the forest. I let out a nervous chuckle, trying to shake the creeping tension in my chest. Maybe it was some strange echo? Sound does weird things out in the open, right? I tried to rationalize it, but that didn't explain why it felt like the laughter was drawing closer, or why it only happened after I laughed. I stepped to the edge of the porch, my boots creaking on the old wood. The flashlight on the table caught my eye. I grabbed it without thinking, turning it on and aiming the beam at the woods. Just shadows, dancing tree branches, stillness. I slowly swept the light from left to right across the tree line. No movement. No glowing eyes. Just my own rising paranoia trying to fill the dark with monsters. I called out, my voice quieter then. I expected, is someone out there? Nothing. No response. No crunch of leaves. Not even the usual chirping of insects. That was the worst part. The silence. It was like the woods were holding their breath. I backed away from the edge of the porch, suddenly unsure if I should go back inside or keep watching. Then the laughter came again, this time closer, sharper, clearer. It sent a chill racing down my spine, and my hand tightened around the flashlight until my knuckles turned white. It wasn't just imitating me anymore. It was playing with me, mocking me. I knew I should have gone back inside, locked the doors, and chalked it up to imagination. But something deeper pulled at me, something I couldn't explain. A curiosity I couldn't suppress. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was that same self-destructive urge that makes people shout, hello, in horror movies. Whatever it was, it made me walk toward the stairs, step down onto the gravel path, and start moving toward the woods. Every crunch of stone beneath. My boots felt like a betrayal of logic. Still, I kept going. The trees loomed larger with each step, their branches clawing at the moonlight. My flashlight beam trembled as I reached the edge of the woods, scanning through the thick brush and skeletal trunks. You're being stupid, I muttered under my breath. Just turn around. But then I heard it again just a few yards ahead, deeper in the trees. My laugh, drawn out, warped, as if someone was stretching a recording. It ended with a low hiss, almost a whisper. Stop, I said aloud, hoping the sound of my own voice would drown me. But the laughter didn't stop. I stood there, breath fogging in the cold air, pulse racing. And then I saw it movement. A figure ducking behind a tree just at the edge of my flashlight's reach. I didn't get a clear look, just a silhouette. Vague, human-shaped. I should have turned back. Should have run. But something about the way it moved, the way it ducked just a beat too late, like it wanted me to see it, that pulled me in. Like a fish to a hook. Hey, I called out. No answer. Only silence again. I stepped into the woods. The flashlight flickered. The laughter came one last time, soft and low, like it was being whispered directly into my ear. Hey. I spun around, the beam slicing through darkness. No one there. The trees seemed to crowd closer, branches tangled above like a twisted ceiling. The forest swallowed me in seconds, the cabin's warm glow disappearing behind. Me, I was alone. At least I hoped I was. The forest closed behind me like a door. One moment, I could still see the soft yellow glow of the cabin's porch light through the trees. And the next, it was gone, swallowed by the dense curtain of shadows. I hesitated, turning to look back, but all I saw was blackness. No path, no clearing. Just endless trees stretching in every direction. Panic started to creep into my throat, but I forced it down. I hadn't gone far. Just retrace your steps. Turn around and go back. Simple, but as I turned to leave, a low rustle stopped me cold. Then laughter. My laughter. It came from ahead. This time, not behind. Soft, breathy, and too close. I froze, flashlight trembling in my hand. It was as if someone had taken a recording of me laughing and dragged it across rusted tape, slightly warped, just off enough to be wrong. Is someone there? I called out again. No answer, just silence, a silence that felt alive. I kept moving forward, deeper into the woods. Branches clawed at my sleeves. The forest floor was uneven, my boots crunching dead leaves and brittle, twigs that snapped like bones underfoot. Each sound I made felt amplified, like the forest was listening. And still, every so often, I would hear it. That laughter. Sometimes and distant, like it was being carried on the wind. Other times close enough that I could have sworn it came from just behind me. But no matter where I turned, there was never anything there. No person, no animal, just shadows. At some point, I realized something far more disturbing. I couldn't tell how long I had been walking. Time felt off, like I was stuck in a loop, endlessly stepping over the same moss-covered log, passing the same tree with the twin gashes carved into its bark. My flashlight caught it 3 times, those exact same slashes. I was going in circles. "Oh, okay," I whispered to myself, pausing to collect my thoughts. Backtrack. Just stop chasing it. Go back. I turned and started retracing my steps, or at least I thought I was. But the laughter started again, this time high above me, as if it were perched in the trees, watching, mocking. I swept the flashlight upward, and for a split second, just a second, I saw it. A face. My face. Not just a vague resemblance, it was me, peering down from the crook of a thick branch, eyes wide and glowing with a dull, silvery sheen. Its mouth was twisted into a crooked smile, teeth far too many for a human. And then it vanished behind the leaves, almost like it had melted into the shadows. I stumbled backward, heart hammering against my ribs. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to scream but couldn't find my voice. Was I dreaming? Hallucinating? No, this was real. Too vivid to be a trick of the mind. I started running not toward the laughter, but away from it, blindly pushing through the forest. My flashlight bobbed wildly in my grasp, casting jerky, dizzying shapes onto the trees around me. Every branch that scraped my arms felt like fingers. Every crunch behind me made me whip around, and still, the laughter followed. It wasn't chasing me like a predator stalks prey. It was playing with me, toying with me like a cat with a trapped mouse. Suddenly, I burst into a small clearing, a shallow natural basin where the moonlight managed to squeeze through the canopy above. I stopped, breathing hard, bending over to catch my breath. That's when I noticed the footprints. Dozens of them, all around me. Boot prints identical to mine. Some fresh, some older, some layered over one another like others had stood here, just like me, again and again. I turned in a slow circle, flashlight trembling in my hand. Then came the whispers, low and breathy, like wind curling around my ears. You laugh. You laugh, ... You laugh, ... I backed away, only to bump into something solid behind me. I spun around, the flashlight beam catching on nothing, just empty space. But I knew what I felt. I knew something had been there, standing still as stone. The light flickered again, and then, snap. A twig broke behind me. I turned too fast, tripped, and crashed to the ground, my flashlight flying from my hand and skittering across the leaves. Darkness swallowed me. The laughter exploded around me, deafening, layered, overlapping, all in my voice. It surrounded me, filling my skull, growing louder and louder until I had to press my hands over my ears and scream. But even that didn't drown it out, because now it was coming from inside my head. I don't know how long I was on the forest floor. Minutes, hours. Time didn't feel real anymore. It stretched and bent, slipping through my fingers like water. I lay curled on my Sighed, hands pressed against my ears, trying to block out the laughter that wouldn't stop. But it wasn't coming from the trees anymore. It was inside my head, now layered, warped versions of my own laugh playing over each other, like some broken chorus. Then, suddenly, it was gone. Silence crashed down around me, suffocating in its weight. I opened my eyes slowly, afraid of what I might see. The flashlight. It lay a few feet away, the bulb cracked, flickering weakly like it was on its last breath. I crawled toward it, every limb sore and unresponsive. My fingers wrapped around the plastic casing, and I lifted it just as a sound cracked through the silence. Not laughter. Whispers, soft and brittle like dry leaves rubbing together. I strained to hear, heart pounding in my ears. Come closer. The words were mine, my voice, but wrong. Dragged out, off key. I spun around, a weak flashlight beam swaying over twisted tree trunks and gnarled roots. And then I saw it standing between two ancient oaks. A figure, still, watching. It wasn't just human-shaped. It was me. It stood maybe 10 feet away, head tilted slightly, face bathed in shadow except for the glint of its eyes, black, reflective, like pools of oil. It wore my clothes, my jacket, my boots. Even had the same small tear in the left knee of my jeans. But the smile stretched too wide, lips cracked at the corners, exposing rows of teeth that didn't belong in any human mouth. It raised a hand slowly, mimicking the way I had waved at the cabin camera earlier that day. Its movements were perfect, rehearsed. Why are you running? It asked in my voice. And then it laughed, that same broken, echoing laugh. My legs moved before my brain did. I bolted. Branches whipped at my face. Thorns tore at my sleeves. I barely held onto the flashlight as I stumbled through the thick brush, not caring where I went, only that it was away from whatever that thing was. But I wasn't alone. Shapes flickered in the corners of my vision. Shadows moved between trees. I could hear footsteps now multiple sets, crunching in sync with mine. And behind it all, the laughter never stopped. Sometimes close. Sometimes far, always mine. I broke into another clearing, my breath ragged. I stopped and turned, aiming the flashlight wildly around me. Nothing. Then movement to my left. I turned just in time to see another figure again. Me dart behind a tree. A flash to my right. Another one. And another. Dozens of them, all dressed like me, faces just slightly off, mouths too wide, heads jerking in unnatural angles as they moved. Their laughter now low, almost gleeful. I turned in a full circle, and I realized I was surrounded. They stepped out from the trees, one by one, their grins twitching. Some tilted their heads like curious dogs. Others walked with staggering, jerking steps like puppets, half-controlled. They all looked like me, but none of them were me. I backed up slowly, flashlight flickering over their pale, too familiar faces. My thoughts raced. What were they? Why me? How do they know everything? About me? One of them, one with a long gash across its cheek that revealed too many teeth, stepped forward. We're all in here, it said, tapping its temple. All your laughs, all your fears. Every time you heard yourself and didn't recognize, the sound ... was us. The others began to laugh again. Louder this time. The sound pierced my skull like glass. I screamed, dropped to my knees, hands over my ears again, but it didn't help. I could hear my voice, layered 100 times. Every pitch, every variation, twisting into one another like tangled thread. And through the laughter, I heard something else. A word. Over and over again, whispered beneath the laughter like a mantra. Stay, stay, stay. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. Then one of them crouched beside me. I looked up and it leaned close, grinning so wide its cheeks tore at the corners. Once you hear your own echo, it whispered, you belong to the woods. Then it pressed its forehead to mine, and I blacked out. When I came to, I was lying flat on my back, staring up at a sky that barely existed, just a few slivers of gray light struggling through the dense canopy above. The air was damp and heavy. My clothes were soaked through with cold dew, and something earthy clung to my skin. I blinked, disoriented, trying to push myself upright, but every muscle screamed with pain like I'd been thrown down a flight of stairs. Was it morning? I couldn't tell. The forest was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no birds. Just a stillness that hung like a heavy blanket, pressing against my chest. I sat up slowly, glancing around the clearing. My flashlight was on the ground beside me, dead. Its final flicker must have come and gone. I picked it up anyway, more for comfort than function, and that's when I noticed the prints in the dirt. Footprints, dozens of them, all around me. Each print was identical in size and pattern. My stride, my weight. They circled where I had been lying, some layered so heavily over one another, it looked like the ground had been stomped around me, and they weren't random. They were dot, dot, dot dancing. There's no other word for it. The patterns were wide and erratic, looping in rhythm like someone many of me had been spinning and twirling around my unconscious body in the dark. I stumbled to my feet, breath quickening. My body felt sore, bruised. I touched the side of my head and winced. There was dried blood in my hair. This had to be a dream. It had to be. But when I turned to leave, something stopped me cold. One of the trees, an old, massive one with bark that looked like blistered skin, had carvings. Dozens of them, all my face. Rough, jagged etchings. Of my features, over and over again, burned into the bark with something sharp. Some smiling, some scowling. One looked like it was screaming. I backed away and turned, adrenaline kicking in, as I started to jog through the trees. I didn't care where I was going, just that I needed to move. Needed to put space between myself and whatever nightmare I'd stepped into. After what felt like hours of weaving through thick underbrush and twisted roots, I finally saw it. The cabin. It stood in the clearing like a lifeline, unchanged, untouched. The porch still creaked when I stepped onto it. The door was shut the same as when I left. For one beautiful moment, I thought maybe I had imagined it all. But when I reached for the doorknob, I heard it. Laughter. My laughter. But this time, it was coming from inside the cabin. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I'd already run. I was done running. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. Darkness spilled out, thick and cold. The air inside was different, heavier, like something was occupying the space. That didn't belong. I stepped in slowly, my boots creaking against the old floorboards. The windows were still shut. Curtains drawn. It should have felt familiar, safe. It didn't. The laughter echoed softly from somewhere. In the back room, the one I hadn't used since arriving. The storage room. Each step I took down the hall felt like walking into the mouth of something. Alive. When I reached the door, I paused. The laughter had stopped. I reached for the knob, sweat running down my back despite the cold, and turned it slowly. The room was empty, mostly. The only thing inside was an old, dust-covered mirror propped against the far wall, one I didn't remember seeing when I first arrived. It was tall, cracked. The glass warped like it had melted and reformed, and standing in the reflection was me. But I wasn't standing in front of it. The version of me in the mirror smiled. I didn't. It raised its hand and waved. I didn't. And then it mouthed something. At first, I couldn't understand. I squinted, watching as it moved its lips again. Slower this time. You are already here. The light bulb overhead shattered. I stumbled back, hands shielding my face. Glass hit the floor. And the laughter came again all around me. Only now, it wasn't just my voice. It was dozens, hundreds, all versions of me. Laughing, whispering, mocking. The reflection was gone when I looked back. Just an empty mirror now. I ran out of that room, slamming the door behind me, my breath ragged. I locked it, even though I knew it wouldn't help. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just outside anymore. It was in here, inside the cabin, inside me. I barricaded the door to the back room with the heaviest chair I could find, my hands trembling so violently I could barely grip the wooden frame. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift in the cabin's old bones made my pulse spike. I sat down in the middle of the living room, legs folded under me, heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to claw its way out. The silence returned, but it wasn't comforting. It was watching. I could feel it. I had heard my own voice echo in the woods. I had seen my own face smirking from the trees. And now, inside this place, this space that was supposed to be mine, I no longer felt like the only occupant. The fireplace was cold and dark. The single light above the kitchen table flickered every few seconds, casting long shadows that seemed to twitch at the edges. I needed to get out. Not much was clear. But where would I go? The forest didn't lead anywhere. It twisted back in on itself, like a snake devouring its own tail. I had tried to run. I had tried to chase that thing, and all it had done was bring me right back here to the laughing cabin, and then the sound started again. But it wasn't laughter this time. It was breathing, heavy, slow, wet, from inside the walls. I pressed my ear to the wooden panel near the window. It was there, like something was pressed just on the other side of the boards, breathing in my rhythm, matching my pace. As I inhaled, it did too. As I exhaled, it followed, mimicking me, mocking me. Then tap, tap, tap. 3 slow knocks on the front door. I stood up too fast, the blood rushing from my head. My feet moved on their own as I approached the door. I knew I shouldn't open it. I knew nothing good was waiting on. The other side, but I had to look. The peephole was dark. Too dark. I leaned closer, and then it opened its eye. My eye, blinking from the other side of the peephole. I screamed and stumbled backward, crashing into the side table and knocking over a lamp. The bulb popped and the room plunged into flickering half-light, the shadows now twitching like insects. I didn't move. I just stared at the door, and it began to laugh, low at first, then higher, louder, until it sounded like someone was crying from the inside out. And the voice, it was mine. It didn't stop. I grabbed the poker from the fireplace and held it like a weapon. The laughter now echoed from every direction beneath the floorboards, from behind the walls, inside the light fixtures, even from the empty staircase that led to the loft I'd never used. I was surrounded by me. And then came the whisper, "You laugh, you laugh, you laugh," I shouted back. "I'm not afraid of you." The voices paused. For a single heartbeat, there was silence. And then, all at once, dozens of versions of my own voice screamed back in unison. "But we're not afraid of you either." The floor shook. The mirror in the hallway shattered with a sound like cracking ice. I ran. I don't know why, or where I thought I was going, but I ran upstairs, my bare feet pounding the steps. The cabin moaned beneath me, the wood bending like it was breathing again. I burst into the loft, slamming the door behind me and dragging a trunk in front of it. And then everything went still, no laughter, no breathing, just the sound of my pulse screaming in my ears. I backed into the corner, curling up, trying to focus on anything real. I pulled my phone from my pocket, praying it still had signal. Nothing. Dead black screen. I must have crushed it when I fell in the woods. I dropped it and stared at the wall across from me, and that's when I saw it. Carvings, like in the tree, but these were words, etched into the wood in jagged, desperate slashes. "You brought it here. You are the echo. Stop laughing. It's not funny anymore." And below them, carved deeper than the others, "You never left the woods." I began to cry. Real tears now. Not fear. Not frustration. Just a deep soul-level horror that settled into my chest like rot. What if they were right? What if I never made it back to the cabin? What if I never made it out of that clearing? What if this whole place, the cabin, the light, the mirror, the whispers, was just another layer of the woods? A mental snare? A trap made of echoes? And if that was true, then who was I? I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat curled. In the loft's farthest corner, knees pulled to my chest, every shadow across the wood grain pulsing like it was alive. The carvings on the wall stared back at me, each word etched deeper in my mind than the wood. I traced them with my eyes again and again until they blurred into one terrible truth. You never left the woods. Outside the barricaded door, the cabin breathed, slowly, weightly, like something massive was pressing its face against every wall. Once, sniffing out the last trembling remnants of my sanity. The voices had stopped. The laughter was gone. But the silence was worse. It was anticipation, a coiled hunger. Dawn never came. I waited, but the sky through the narrow loft window stayed the same perpetual twilight, as if the sun had forgotten how to rise in this cursed part of the world. I tried to tell myself that it would be over if I left the cabin, if I just walked away. But I knew better. This place was inside me now. I didn't bring something out of the woods. The woods brought something into me. When I finally moved, it wasn't because I had a plan. It was because I couldn't take the silence anymore. If I was going to die, I needed it to happen on my terms. I kicked the trunk aside, opened the loft door slowly. The cabin was still. The air, colder. The walls, darker. My boots echoed on the stairs as I descended. It felt like I was moving through a dream. Every object slightly shifted from where it should be off by inches, just enough to keep my skin crawling. And there, on the living room wall, hadn't been a mirror before, was one now. Tall, cracked, wider than the one in the storage room. And this time, my reflection wasn't waiting. It walked into view from the side. I froze. It wore my face. My blood-stained jacket, my bruises, even the small scar above my left eyebrow. But it moved wrong. It smiled. I didn't. Then it stepped closer to the mirror and raised a hand. And so did I not voluntarily. My arm lifted as if on strings, mimicking it. I fought to stop it, but something had latched onto my muscles like I was the reflection now. The thing mouthed the same word again and again, over and over, without sound. Switch, switch, switch. No, I growled, forcing my arm back to my side. The reflection frowned, tilted its head, and laughed. My mouth stayed shut. The first time in this entire nightmare that we didn't laugh together. And that made it angry. Suddenly, the glass cracked, splitting down the center like a lightning bolt. The reflection lunged. It didn't wait for permission. It stepped through. Glass shattered, spraying outward as if from an explosion. I was thrown back, slammed into the cabin's front door so hard, I felt something pop in my shoulder. The thing stood in the center of the room, breathing heavily. It looked exactly like me, but its eyes were sunken voids, and its grin never moved. I am what you left behind, it said. Voice layered my voice, but deeper, warped. I didn't leave anything behind. I spat. It stalked forward. You laughed at your own fear. Do you remember that night? When you heard your voice in the dark, and you laughed? I did remember. I chuckled to calm myself. To convince myself it was nothing. And in that moment, that was when it found me. That laugh, it whispered, circling me, was permission. You opened the door. I reached toward the hearth, grabbing the iron poker again, my only weapon, my only anchor. The echo lunged. I swung hard, connecting with its shoulder. The sound was wrong like striking wet clay. It shrieked, not in pain, but in fury. I scrambled, back toward the storage room, the one I'd locked. The one with the mirror, if it came through there once, maybe. I threw the door open. The mirror was gone. In its place stood a tall, blackened frame, like a doorway carved from shadows. And behind it, a forest. The forest. My breath hitched. The same trees, same gnarled roots. The place I had heard the first laugh. This thing wasn't trying to take my place. It was trying to drag me back. It chased me down the hallway as I ran toward the frame. Its laughter was pure rage, now raw and high-pitched. As I reached the threshold, I turned to face it. No more echoes, I whispered, and I jumped through. I landed hard in the clearing, knees slamming into the cold earth. But something was different. There were no twisted copies, no reflections, just wind. And bird song. Birds. The morning. Sun poured through the trees. The laughter was gone. I turned, expecting the creature to burst through the veil. But it didn't. The frame was gone, vanished like smoke. The woods were just woods again. Real. Alive. I staggered forward, following the trail. This time I found the edge of the forest. And then the road. I made it back to civilization by dusk, filthy and shaken, but alive. I moved far from that cabin, threw away the key, deleted every picture I'd taken there. I even stopped recording my own voice. No more videos, no more voicemails. I didn't want to hear myself laugh again, because sometimes late at night, when the world is quiet, I still hear it. That warped echo of me, laughing from the trees, waiting for me to laugh back. The nights out here were different, too quiet, too still. In the city, silence was never truly silent. There were always cars rumbling in the distance, neighbors stomping above, sirens wailing every now and then. But here in this small town, at the edge of the forest, the silence felt heavier. It wrapped around the house like fog, creeping through the walls and pressing into your chest. I used to find it peaceful. Now I'm not so sure. It was around 11:30 p.m. when I first saw it. I was standing by the window of my second-story bedroom, sipping tea and gazing absent-mindedly into the darkness. I did that sometimes, watch the still world beyond the glass, just to remind myself there was a world out there. The street was dimly lit by an old lamp that flickered every few seconds, casting long shadows that danced eerily on the asphalt below. Everything was normal. Until it wasn't. My eyes drifted to a spot just beneath that flickering lamp. And there it was. A face. Pale, still, floating just above the edge of the sidewalk, half hidden in the shadows. The eyes were wide, glassy. And unblinking locked directly on mine. I blinked hard, thinking it had to be a trick of the light. But when I opened my eyes again, it was still there, watching me, not moving, not blinking, just present. I felt a chill slide down my spine. The tea in my mug had gone cold, but I barely noticed. My breath caught in my throat as I stared, back at the thing. It wasn't anyone I recognized, and it didn't belong there. I didn't know how long I stood there, but eventually, almost imperceptibly, the face faded. It didn't duck or walk away, just vanished like smoke dissipating. Into the night. I stepped back from the window, heart thudding, and shut the curtains in one fast, jerky motion. I even locked the curtains, as if that could do anything. I told myself it was nothing. A shadow, a trick of the eye. But no matter how many excuses I whispered to myself, none of them stuck, because I knew what I had seen. That face was real, and it had seen me too. I tried to push the incident out of my mind, drowning it with routine. I brushed my teeth, checked my locks twice, turned on the hallway nightlight like always, and crawled into bed. But sleep didn't come easily. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Every gust of wind tapping the window made my stomach clench. I don't remember when I finally drifted off, but the nightmare came fast. I was standing in the woods behind the house, barefoot and freezing. A dozen faces floated in the trees, pale and silent, surrounding me. None of them spoke. They didn't have to. Their eyes had enough wide, hollow and hungry. I woke up with a gasp, drenched in cold sweat. The digital clock beside my bed read 3:17 a.m. I sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. My throat was dry, so I headed to the kitchen for some water. As I passed by the window on the landing, I paused. I shouldn't have paused. Curiosity is a cursed thing. I peeled back a sliver of the curtain, just enough to see the street. And there it was again, another face. Not the same one as before. This one was closer, much closer. Directly across the street, standing just at the edge of the neighbor's yard, illuminated by the street lamp's dim orange glow. A woman's face, if you could even call it that. The skin looked waxy and tight, the mouth slightly open and what might have been a smile or a scream. Her eyes were sunken in, but wide open. I dropped the curtain, stumbled back, knocking over a picture frame on the hallway table. Glass shattered, but I barely heard it. My ears were ringing, my heart beat, thudding so loud it drowned out everything else. 2 faces, 2 nights. Was it just a coincidence? No, I didn't believe in coincidences. Not like this. I didn't go back to sleep that night. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I brewed coffee, tidied the kitchen, even went for a walk to clear my head. I passed the street lamp where I had seen the first face. Nothing was there, of course. Just a busted bulb flickering overhead and a patch of dead grass beneath it. I even laughed to myself out loud. You're losing it, I thought. Sleep deprivation. Isolation. That's all this was. But when I got back to the house and checked my phone, there was a new photo in my camera roll. I hadn't taken any photos. My fingers trembled as I opened it. It was a blurry image of my bedroom window from the outside. Taken last night. I dropped the phone and staggered back, the room suddenly spinning. I hadn't left the house. I hadn't stepped outside. No one else had access to my phone. So who took that picture? And more importantly, why did the window in the photo show me, standing there, watching the street, when I swear I hadn't moved at all? I stared at the phone on the floor like it was a loaded weapon. The photo was still open grainy, overexposed, but unmistakable. The angle was low, like it had been taken from the sidewalk, and there in the window was my silhouette. My face. My exact posture from last night. Arms at my side, head tilted slightly. Only I don't remember standing that way. I had just peeked out, then backed away. That's what I told myself. But there was the photo, and there I was, still as a statue, watching. I picked up the phone, hands shaking, and deleted the image. Without thinking, then immediately regretted it. What if that was the only proof I'd ever have? What if I needed to show anyone, that something was happening? But who would believe me? I spent the rest of the day pacing. I didn't eat. I didn't leave the house. Every time I passed a window or a mirror, I avoided looking into it. My reflection no longer felt like mine. By evening, I had made a decision. I set up the security camera again, this time with a new SD card and a direct feed to my laptop. I aimed it at the same spot where I'd seen the face the first time, the street lamp, still flickering like a dying firefly. I even left the curtain cracked just slightly, enough for the lens to see out, but not enough for me to look out. I couldn't bear to. I turned on every light in the house and sat in the kitchen, huddled over my laptop, eyes fixed on the feed. Nothing happened for the first 2 hours. Then, at exactly 11:39 p.m., the camera feed stuttered. Once, twice. Static bled across the screen. And then a new face appeared. I didn't move. I couldn't. My eyes burned from staring so long. But I didn't dare blink. The face was pressed against the glass. This time my glass. The second-story window, where I was sitting right now. I spun around so fast my chair tipped over. I barely noticed the crash. I looked toward the window. Curtains still drawn. No sign of anyone outside. But when I turned back to the laptop, the face was still there. Clear. Direct. Staring into the camera as if it knew I was watching. And it smiled. Not a kind smile. Not even a human one. It was too wide, too full of teeth, too eager. Its lips stretched unnaturally far, revealing gums that were dry and cracked, as if it had never tasted water. Then the feed cut out completely. Dark. I lunged for the window, yanked the curtain open. Nothing. Empty street. Flickering lamp. No face. But when I looked down at the windowsill, I saw it. A handprint. Greasy. Smudged. Long-fingered. Pressed into the outside of the glass. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I just sat on the floor with the lights on. Hammer in one hand, phone in the other. Refreshing the camera feed every few minutes. It didn't come back. Nothing did, but I didn't feel alone. Not anymore. Morning came with the slow creep of pale light, but it brought no relief. I finally worked up the courage to check the camera's SD card. I played the footage back. From the moment the face appeared, I watched in frozen silence as it stepped into view, not onto the porch, not climbing up from the lawn. It simply faded into existence, like someone revealing an invisible shape. The face came first, then the shoulders, then a long, thin body. It had no eyes, only empty sockets, and its skin clung to its bones like wet paper. It smiled into the lens, almost lovingly. Then something strange happened. It leaned toward the camera. Closer. Closer. The mic didn't pick up the words clearly, just static and distortion. But when I turned up the volume, I swear I heard my name twice, softly, like a mother calling a child to dinner. That was enough. I ripped the camera off the sill and threw it into the trash bin outside. Whatever this thing was, I didn't want to see it anymore. I didn't want it seeing me. But as I came back inside, something made me pause. There was a new picture message on my phone. No number, no sender. Just an image of me, standing outside, the trash bin, taken from my bedroom window. I stared at the photo for what felt like hours, but couldn't bring myself to delete it. There was no timestamp, no sender. The shot was perfectly framed, me standing in the driveway. Head turned slightly toward the trash bin, just moments before I re-entered the house. I hadn't even known I'd looked up. But in the picture, my eyes were clearly fixed on the window, fixed on whoever was taking the picture. I ran through every possibility. Maybe a prank, maybe a hacked camera, maybe someone had access to my phone. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the less. It made sense. No one was supposed to be up there. I was alone. I turned off my phone and tossed it onto the couch. Whatever was going on, technology wasn't going to save me. I needed sleep. I needed peace. My mind felt raw, like it had been scraped against concrete. I headed to the bathroom, avoiding the mirrors like they were traps. I brushed my teeth in the hallway, staring at the floor. I only turned off the lights after checking every door and locking every window. But as I finally climbed into bed, something felt off. The room was still, silent, too silent. I waited, pulling the blanket to my chin like a child. Minutes passed, maybe an hour. I started to drift off. Tap, tap. 3 slow knocks against the window. My window. Again. I snapped upright, pulse hammering. No footsteps. No creaks. Just the sound of fingernails gently rapping against the glass like a polite invitation. I stayed frozen. My eyes adjusted to the dark, trying to catch movement beyond the blinds. The tap came again, softer this time, almost curious. I slid out of bed and crossed the room slowly, feet silent on the floor. I hovered inches from the window, afraid to look, afraid not to. Then I yanked the blinds open. Nothing. No one. Only the empty street, bathed in moonlight, the trees swaying gently. Relief washed over me, but only for a second. Because when I turned around to return to bed, I saw it. A face inside the room, reflected in the full-length mirror by the closet. My blood went cold. It was standing just behind me. I spun, raising my fists. Empty. No one there. But the reflection, it was still there, still grinning. Its mouth twitched, then moved, not in sync with mine. And then it whispered, though. No sound reached my ears. You looked? I stumbled back, hitting the dresser. My heart felt like it was going to shatter through my ribs. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes again, the reflection was gone. Just me in the glass now, trembling, pale, wild-eyed. I didn't sleep after that. By morning, my house was unrecognizable. Every reflective surface had been covered in mirrors. Draped with towels, TVs turned face down, windows painted with sheets of newspaper and duct tape. I wasn't going to let them in again. If they wanted to be seen, they'd have to do more than knock. I paced the house for hours. My phone remained off. I didn't dare turn it back on, afraid another image might arrive. Another me, caught doing something I didn't remember. I tried to shower but couldn't handle the steam-fogged mirror. I left the bathroom half-dressed, shaking. By dusk, I was sitting on the floor in the living room, hammer in hand, back against the wall. The only light came from the table lamp across the room, warm yellow, comforting in a way that daylight never had been. Then the lamp flickered, twice, and went out. The silence was instant, pressing, alive. I didn't move. Not when the sound came again. Not when it changed. Not tapping this time. Scraping. Slow, deliberate, metal on glass scraping. From the inside. Of the window behind me, I held my breath. I didn't dare look. But then, a creak. The unmistakable sound of hinges shifting. The door to the hallway had opened. By itself. I turned slowly toward it, and in the shadows beyond, I saw a figure. Step into view. It was tall, thin, wearing my face. But not just my face, my entire form. Same clothes, same trembling hands. It smiled at me, not cruelly, but with sad understanding. As if it were tired too. It took a step closer. And then another. That's when I realized I was still holding the hammer. It tilted its head, curious. I raised the hammer slightly. It mirrored me. Then in my voice broken and hoarse it whispered, "You let us in." The thing that wore my face didn't blink. It stood in the hallway just beyond the soft edge of light spilling from the lamp, half sunken in shadow like it belonged there. Its smile wasn't a human smile. It was stretched too wide, the lips too thin, the expression too perfect, like someone had painted it on. It raised its hand slowly, mirroring me exactly, not delayed, not imitating, simultaneous. I lowered the hammer slightly. My mouth opened, but I didn't know what I was going to say. What could I possibly say to myself? "I didn't let you in," I whispered, barely audible. "You forced your way in." Its head tilted, the same way mine did when I didn't understand something. "We were always here," it said. My voice, my cadence, but wrong. "You looked for us. You called us." "No," I said, backing toward the wall. "I didn't." "You did," it insisted, stepping into the light now. Every glance into a dark window, every late-night reflection, every time you wondered who might be watching, you were reaching for us. I tightened my grip on the hammer. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but I was frozen. Not because of fear, exactly, but because the longer I looked at it, the more I felt it was right. I had looked. I had stared into the dark hoping to see something, not consciously, but something deep inside me. Wanted to be seen, wanted to be known. "You don't have to fight anymore," it said. "You're tired. We can carry the weight." "No," I said again, firmer this time. "You're not me." It stopped walking. Its smile didn't fade. "Then why do you remember the dark?" The dreams? The hands in the glass? Images exploded in my mind snippets I couldn't explain. Hands pressed against the mirror while I stared, unmoving. A dozen versions of me walking out from the woods, eyes black, lips curled in quiet grins. A cold breath on my neck while I brushed my teeth. A voice behind me in the silence that said, "Let us wear you." I screamed and hurled the hammer. It passed right through the figure, clanging against the hallway wall with a hollow metallic thud. The thing didn't flinch. It glitched, just for a second. A stutter in its movement, like a corrupted video loop. And then it was gone, not walked away, not disappeared. Just cut out like a piece of film spliced from reality. The next hour was a blur. I tore down the curtains, shattered the mirrors, covered the TV and bedsheets in duct tape. I sat with the lamp back on, every other light blazing, my hammer in one hand, a kitchen knife in the other, and still, the reflections came, not full faces now, just flickers, a smile in the glass of a picture frame, a flash of teeth in the microwave door, my reflection waving when I wasn't. My body stayed locked in that room until dawn. And as soon as daylight broke, I drove, didn't pack, didn't shower. I left. Everything. I moved into a third-story apartment in the middle of the city. No trees, no quiet. Just noise. Cars, sirens, life. I figured the city would drown them out. And for a while, it worked. A week passed. Then, two, I started to believe I was safe. Then came the email. No sender. No subject. Just a single attachment. A photo. Me, standing at my new window. Behind me, reflected in the glass, was a pale face, grinning. That night, I didn't sleep. Every light stayed on. I stared into every reflection, waiting. I didn't speak. I didn't blink unless I had to. And just after 3 a.m., I saw it again. This time, not in the mirror, not in the TV, in the window. A new face. Not mine. Not anymore. It smiled, then tapped the glass once. Then it whispered. Something that didn't make sense. Not at first. But as it faded into the dark, I heard it again, inside my head, with perfect clarity. We're already inside. Now, it's your turn to smile. I didn't sleep. Couldn't every time. I shut my eyes. I saw them grinning in the shadows behind my eyelids. Faces that looked like mine but weren't. Faces that twisted into something too perfect, too symmetrical, too deliberate. Like an artist had sculpted a version of me that only understood expressions, not meaning. I sat by the window with the curtains pulled tight, my back pressed to the wall, knife in hand, my phone screen lighting up every few seconds as I checked and rechecked the email. The photo was still there, and the timestamp? It had been taken 5 minutes before I found it in my inbox, which meant someone or something was already watching before I knew it. The face and the glass behind me had features that felt familiar, but slightly off. The skin was too smooth, the grin too wide, and the eyes, they were mine, not just similar. Exactly mine. Every freckle, every red vein, every twitch in the lower lid. Except they weren't connected to me anymore. I zoomed into the photo until the pixels blurred. The figure behind me in the glass wasn't just standing, it was leaning forward, as if pressing against the barrier, trying to slip through. I deleted the email. I deleted it twice. But every time I reopened my phone, it was there again. I took a hammer to the windows, all of them. Shattered glass rained down like brittle ice, the cold night wind rushing in behind it. Alarms went off. Lights in other apartments blinked on. I didn't care. I needed to breathe something real. But as I looked at the shards of broken glass on the floor, my heart stopped. In every piece, no matter how small, I saw reflections. Not of me, of them. Dozens of them. Tiny faces stretched across the fragments, smiling in silence, some laughing, some just watching mouths, slightly open, as if whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. The light shifted. All their mouths moved, in sync, like a choir. A whisper, soft but unified, let us in. I screamed and stomped on the shards, grinding them into the hardwood, but the faces remained, still smiling, still speaking. That's when I realized the whisper wasn't coming from the glass anymore. It was coming from inside me. I locked myself in the bathroom, breathing hard, eyes scanning every reflective surface. I couldn't bear to look at the mirror, so I draped a towel over it. Then I unplugged the sink light. Then I shut off my phone. Darkness fell over the apartment, like a blanket soaked in static, but in the dark, I could feel them better, hear them inside the walls, inside my head. They began repeating my thoughts before I could think them. They finished my sentences as I formed them. They laughed exactly the way I did, seconds before I did it. I wasn't being hunted anymore. I was being mirrored. Around 4 a.m., my doorbell rang. I didn't move. It rang again. Slow, deliberate. 3 times. A rhythm I recognized from somewhere I couldn't quite remember. Then I heard it. The voice. My voice. On the other side of the door. Open up, it said gently. I'm you. You locked yourself out, remember? My breath caught in my throat. No, I whispered. You're not. You are. It replied. We both are. I grabbed the knife and stepped closer. I pressed my eye to the peephole. Nothing, just empty hallway. Then the door shook. Just once. Like someone had slammed into it with their shoulder, but gently, lovingly. I'm tired of knocking, the voice said. Let's switch places. Just for a little while. You rest. I smile. And then I saw it. Sliding under the door. Sliver of reflection. Not a shadow. Not light. A smile. Stretching from edge to edge of the hallway floor. Curved like a crescent moon. Slowly curling upward. It didn't belong to a face. It was the face. I backed away, heart thundering. My feet tangled in the broken glass on the floor, and I slipped, falling back hard, the knife skidding from my grip. As I lay there dazed, the whisper came again, but this time, from inside my head, you're smiling. And I realized I was not by choice, not out of fear. My face was pulling itself into a grin, muscles tightening beyond my control. My lips hurt from how far they stretched. My jaw popped as it opened slowly, wider than it should. I tried to scream, but all that came out was laughter. My laughter. From the window. From the door. From the mirrors I had shattered. From me. I don't know how long I lay there on the floor, the glass biting into my back, the grin tearing across my face like a mask I couldn't take off. My mouth ached from the stretch of it. My jaw felt unhinged. I couldn't stop it. Every time I tried to scream, all that escaped was laughter. My laughter, but hollow and broken, like an echo in a funhouse mirror, somewhere in the apartment. I heard the creak of a door slowly opening, the front door, but I hadn't moved. I couldn't move. Something had taken over. I pushed myself up slowly, my body trembling, legs numb. Blood smeared across my palms where the glass had sliced me. I stumbled toward the door, knowing I shouldn't, knowing I was walking straight into whatever this me wanted. But something deep inside whispered that if I didn't face it now, I would never be me again. I reached the hallway. The door stood wide open. Cold air funneled in, carrying with it the scent of soil and rot, like something had clawed its way up from the earth and brought the woods with it. And there just outside the threshold stood me, but not quite. Its eyes were hollow black. Pits. Its grin split its face like a wound. It wore my skin like a costume, every feature perfect, but somehow, it didn't blink. It didn't breathe. It just stared. I've been patient, it said in my voice, calm and steady. But you're tired, and I'm ready. I clenched my fists, stepping back, forcing the words out past my trembling lips. You're not me. You made me, it whispered. Every late-night fear, every glance out the window, every moment you looked for me, you let me grow. I'm not a monster. I'm your reflection. And behind it, dozens more. Faces, hundreds, all versions of me. Grinning, twitching, mimicking every breath, every blink, every tremble. They lined the street, their faces pale and luminescent under the flickering light. Eyes locked onto me like predators watching their prey realize the truth too late. My vision swam. My knees buckled. No, I breathed. This isn't real. But it is, the lead reflection said, stepping across the threshold into my home. The moment its foot touched the floor, every mirror in the apartment shattered. A scream burst from every shard of my voice, multiplied, warping into a chorus of agony. Let me take your place, it said, walking closer. You rest. I'll be you now. I'll smile for you, laugh for you, live for you. It raised its hand and touched my cheek. And suddenly, I was staring at myself. I stood in the doorway now, grinning, watching. My reflection no longer in the glass, in the flesh. Something had switched. I felt my limbs stiffen. My body felt hollow, like I wasn't in it anymore. I banged on the inside of my own head, screaming, clawing at the walls of my skull. But no sound escaped. Outside, I watched through my own eyes as my body moved with calm, measured ease. It shut the door. It stepped over the glass. It turned off the lights, and then walked to the mirror. I saw it then. I was in the mirror, trapped, my face twisted in panic, hands pressed to the inside of the glass. But my body, the thing wearing my skin, just looked at me, smiled, tilted its head, and walked away. It's been 3 days now. I don't know how time works in here. Not really. The mirror is cold and silent. I don't eat. I don't sleep. I just watch. Watch him. The thing that replaced me live my life. He eats my food, wears my clothes, laughs with my friends, goes to work. And every night, just before bed, he walks up to the mirror, smiles, and whispers, "Still watching?" I pound my fists on the other side of the glass. I scream until my throat is raw. But no one hears me because I'm not out there anymore. I'm in here. And every time someone walks past a mirror and sees a flicker of movement that doesn't match, every time they swear the reflection moved just a second too late. It's me, screaming, begging, waiting for someone to look close enough to see the truth. Because the faces, they never wanted in. They wanted me to switch. And now that I'm inside, they're still looking for the next person who dares to look too long into the dark.